Do you promise yourself that every binge is going to be your last, only to find yourself binge eating again? This is a very frustrating cycle to be caught up in, where you feel like you're breaking promise after promise to yourself. And in this video, I'm going to teach you about this one last time mentality and how to overcome it so that you can be free of binge eating for good. I'm Kathryn Hansen. I'm the author of Brain Over Binge and the Brain Over Binge Recovery Guide, and I also host the Brain Over Binge podcast. Welcome to my YouTube channel where I share practical, no-nonsense advice about how to stop feeling so out of control around food. To keep you focused and motivated as you end binge eating and as you use the concepts that I teach, you can get the free 31-day Brain Over Binge inspiration booklet through the link in the video description. And now I'll get to today's topic, which is the one last time thoughts. If you're anything like I was when I was a binge eater, you have had countless last binges. And it can be such a frustrating thing to always be telling yourself, this is the last time you're going to engage in this harmful behavior, only to find yourself doing it again. And I want to assure you up front that this is not just you struggling with this. This is a very universal pattern when it comes to any sort of bad habit or addiction. And it's honestly something that even people without a bad habit or addiction struggle with in their day-to-day life. I want to dive deeper into talking about these one last time thoughts because once you understand them and you understand why they're arising, it becomes easier to detach from them and to stop following them into harmful actions. So I believe that the one last time thoughts are sort of an intersection between our primal brain, or what I call the lower brain in the Brain Over Binge books, and our higher brain, or our more uniquely human brain. And I'll explain what I mean by this. We all have this primitive system inside of ourselves. Our lower brain really calls for maximizing pleasure. It calls for avoiding as much pain as possible. It calls for having us sort of take the easy route. And it also is in charge of maintaining our habits, kind of what we've always done. And in the case of bad habits and addictions and things like binge eating, it calls for a behavior that we know is not good for us. It sort of gets conditioned to believe that this behavior is necessary for our survival. And then on the other hand, we have our higher brain. We have our more uniquely human self. And that's the part of you that turned on this video. That's the part of you that knows that binge eating is harming you. That's the part of you that wants to recover. You can rationally see that you don't want binge eating in your life. But what happens is that the primitive brain, because it's conditioned to believe that you need to binge, it's going to send out these strong urges and cravings for the behavior. And in those moments, it's going to feel like that's what you want and need. But you also have your higher brain that knows that you really shouldn't be doing that. So in order to kind of appease both of your brains, you say, okay, I'll just do it one last time. And you give in. You give in to those strong cravings and urges for the binge, and you promise your higher brain that, hey, I know you don't want to be doing this anymore, but I'm just going to do it one last time and then I'll start tomorrow. So in that moment, it sort of provides a solution. I mean, we all know it's not a solution to binge, but it sort of resolves the dilemma temporarily between whether you're going to binge or not. You have this strong craving for it, but you know you don't want to do it. So it seems like this nice compromise. Oh, I'll just do it one more time and then I'll quit. But the problem is this cycle can repeat over and over again. Like I talked about, I had countless times that this happened that I told myself, okay, I'll just do it one more time, only to find myself doing that exact same thing again. So how do we break this cycle? How do we stop falling into this trap of one last time? I think a big part of it is that understanding. You have to expect that the one last time thoughts are going to show up. Because what happens is early on in your addiction or early on when you first started binge eating, you likely truly believed the one last time thought in the moment. You knew you shouldn't be doing the behavior, but you knew the urges were so strong and uncomfortable that you almost felt like you had to do something about it, right? You had to act on them just to make the urges go away. In the Brain Over Binge approach, I teach that the urges are the only direct cause of binge eating. These urges can be so uncomfortable, so it's understandable that you wanted to make that discomfort go away. And also, your higher brain knew you shouldn't be doing the behavior, so the one last time mentality can provide the justification that you need in the moment to act on the urge. And I know that no one with a binge eating habit is trying to make excuses or justifications, but it's just what happens when we have such strong cravings. We look for a reason to give in. And I believe that the one last time justification is one of the biggest reasons that we give ourselves to give in. And this happens even outside of binge eating. If you look at just habits or pleasurable behaviors that you do in your day to day life, you can tell yourself one last time. Like if you're watching your favorite TV series and you know you should go to bed and you tell yourself, okay, I'll just watch one last episode. And then you end up watching five more. Or if you're trying to wake up in the morning and you tell yourself, okay, I'll just hit snooze one more time, and you end up hitting it three more times. And I know I'm guilty of this for sure. There are just these little times during the day when we can see our primal brain at work. It wants to maximize our pleasure and comfort. And most of us are able to find a balance between pleasure and then also pursuing our goals and really connecting with our higher brain. This one last time mentality usually doesn't cause too much of an issue when it comes to watching additional shows or hitting the snooze alarm or scrolling extra on social media. We're just pleasure seeking creatures, and that's okay, most of the time. But when it comes to bad habits and addictions and binge eating, this one last time mentality can really take a dark turn. Once you start justifying a binge or justifying a negative behavior with the one last time thought, that thought becomes deeply habitual over time. So that every time you have an urge to binge or every time you have an urge for that negative behavior, your brain will automatically produce the thought one last time. Any thought that works to get you to binge in the past, your brain will produce it in the future in order to get you to maintain the habit. That's why it can seem like an endless cycle of having an urge to binge, hearing the one last time thought, following it, having another urge to binge, having another one last time thought, and following that. And I want you to give yourself forgiveness for following it in the past. It's very, very convincing. There can be an illusion that if you just do the behavior one more time, then you'll be satisfied and you won't want to do it again. But this is actually faulty logic because every time you do the behavior, it solidifies that behavior even more. It keeps your body and brain feeling like they need the behavior. It perpetuates those urges in your brain. I want you to step back and think about if you were talking to someone else who you care about who wanted to stop binge eating. Would you tell that person that having a last binge would make sense? Would you tell them that that would make their desire for it go away? Of course not. You would try to help them overcome that desire for the last binge. You would try to help them never binge again. And even if that person did have a binge, you wouldn't tell them that having another last binge made sense. When you step back and look at it as if it's happening to someone else, it's easier to see this cycle more clearly. The goal is not to have a last binge or many last binges. The goal, and really what brings you toward freedom, is to not have any more binges, to start deconditioning those pathways in your brain so that you no longer want the behavior. It's important to recognize that no matter when you try to quit, this one last time mentality is going to come up. So that deep acceptance is important. You have to know that anytime you have an urge, you're going to have the one last time thought, but that doesn't mean you have to follow it. You can learn to experience a one last time thought and not have that one last binge. And then eventually these one last time thoughts just go away. Your brain learns that you're not going to have that one last binge. You're never going to have another binge. And it stops producing the thoughts and it stops producing all of those urges. Until this point, you may have seen the one last time thoughts as valid or as deserving of your attention. But I hope that this video has helped you see that these are faulty thoughts and that you can learn to dismiss them just like you can learn to dismiss any thought that encourages a binge. It's so powerful when you realize that you truly do not, nor did you ever want one last binge. What you truly want is freedom from binge eating, now and for good. If you want more help and personalized support as you end binge eating, we offer one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and my self-paced online course that is only $18.99 per month. You can learn about those options at brainoverbinge.com/subscribe, and that link is in the video description. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that it has helped you with the one last time thoughts, and I hope to see you in the next video.